Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to the G.A.T.E.S Performance Night. Your attendance is a great encouragement to our students, and we appreciate you spending part of your evening with us. I'd like to introduce members of our staff and administration who are in attendance this evening. And if I overlook anyone, please let me know. I see Mrs. Terry Miller in the back. She is the principal of New Richmond Elementary. And then Mr. Adam Bird, our superintendent, is here tonight. So we appreciate that. Did I overlook anyone that was able to be here? Okay, great. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Rachel Reynolds, and I am the District Gifted Coordinator and the Gifted Intervention Specialist at Locust Corner Elementary and New Richmond Elementary. This is Karen Burke, and she is the Gifted Intervention Specialist at Monroe Elementary. We hope you enjoy the program we have prepared for you.
In 1839, the United States was on the verge of a civil war. The passions of the time provided plenty of fuel for a legal battle involving a ship full of Africans discovered off the coast of New York. Their fate was put into the hands of the American legal system. The 6th grade class at New Richmond Elementary now presents the Amistad case.
In 1839, a U.S. naval ship seized a suspicious-looking schooner off the coast of New York. It was a Spanish ship by the name of Amistad. On board were 53 Africans and 2 Spaniards. Spaniards claimed that the Africans were slaves and had killed the entire crew. The full details of their story would not be revealed until the case was brought to court.
The court is here today to hear testimony in the case of the United States versus Amistad Africans. The prosecution may now present its case.
Your Honor, if it please the court, we'd like to call our first witness, Mr. Pedro Montez. Mr. Montez, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Do you recognize the defendants?
They're all slaves. I rightfully purchased them in Havana, Cuba. I loaded them onto the Amistad and was on my way to another town in Cuba where I had intended to sell them.
What happened to you and your crew during this trip?
The Africans came up from the hull of the ship in the middle of the night. Somehow they had picked their locks and goblins. They found a crate full of machetes and used it to kill the entire crew.
Why didn't they kill you and your mate for their ruins?
They demanded that we sail west toward Africa. I tricked them by sailing north during the night. Fortunately, the U.S. Navy ship found us before it was too late.
When it was time for the defense to present its case, Attorney Roger Baldwin called Joseph Sinquet to the stand. Sinquet had been chosen by the Africans on board the Amistad earlier. He spoke only Mending, an African language, so he had to speak to the court through an interpreter who could speak both Mending and English.
Lenny, please tell the court where you are from.
I am Mending from Menuhin, which you call Sierra Leone.
So you are not from Cuba?
No, I was only there for 3 days.
And you are not a slave?
No, I was a farmer in Menuhin. I had my own land, a wife, and children. The whites kidnapped me and the others you see here.
What happened to you and the other Mending?
You cannot imagine. The crew beat us, starved us, and worse.
Why did you attack the crew of the Amistad?
We were taken against our will. I would do anything to get back to my homeland, my family. Any man would do the same.
Would you like to make any other statements to the court?
We are badgered, like you. Give us back our freedom.
Your Honor, the defense rests its case.
Both parties may now present their closing statement.
The prosecution has proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that these men are guilty of mutiny and murder. They should therefore be sentenced with the maximum penalty allowed by the law.
Your Honor, as we have shown, the defendants are from Sierra Leone. There are no U.S. citizens involved in this case. How can they be tried in a U.S. court of law?
The court agrees with the defense. Mr. Montez is a Spanish citizen, and the defense are from Sierra Leone. Furthermore, the crime happened at sea. This case does not in any way involve the United States or its interests. We order the defendants to be returned to Sierra Leone at the expense of the U.S. government since they were taken from the Amistad by a Navy ship.
The defendants jumped and cheered when they heard the verdict. But this was not to be the end of the Amistad case. Martin Van Buren, the President of the United States, was getting pressure from his advisors to bring the case to the Supreme Court.
Mr. President, the decision of the trial court on the Amistad case is most unpopular. Many people believe you should use your presidential powers to appeal the case to the Supreme Court.
The rule court has already ruled. Why should I concern myself with the fate of a few Africans?
The slavery question has brought this country to the verge of civil war.
Do you think this...
Southern slave owners are ready to separate from the Union. A more favorable decision in this case might help you when you seek re-election.
Do you think the Supreme Court may reverse the decision?
There's a good chance. 5 out of 9 judges are slave owners.
Good point. Issue an immediate order that St. and his men not be released. The Amistad case will be tried one more time.
St. and his supporters were outraged when they heard the news. By this time, the Amistad case had received a lot of attention in the press. John Quincy Adams, a former U.S. president, offered his services as defense attorney. The date for the appeal was February 22, 1841. Members of the courtroom listened closely as the attorney summarized
The defendants in this case are not human beings, they're slaves. Mr. Montez clearly established that he owned them at one time. As slaves, the defendants have no more rights and a beast of burden. They are property in Spain and should be returned to Spain. A Spanish court of law may then make a final decision in the case.
The Africans were brought into Cuba illegally. Therefore, Mr. Montez cannot claim that he ever raped his owner. The defendants were never slaves. They were born free and had the right to their freedom. The men and women you see here are not criminals. Rather, they are more akin to the revolutionaries who fought against Britain during the American Revolution. They were fighting for their lives and their freedom. The United States is the land of justice, and justice demands these men and women to be set free.
The decision of the lower court is upheld. The defendants were taken from their homeland against their will. They had the right to fight back and resist. They are free to go. However, the U.S. government has no obligation to pay for their return trip to Sierra Leone.
St. and the other men, they were at last free. On the other hand, they had no money and were stranded in the United States. After all they had been through, they refused to give up. St. learned English and told eager crowds his story. Eventually, he raised enough money from these lectures for a return trip. The Amistad captives finally returned to their homeland in 1842, 3 years after they had been kidnapped.
I want to make you aware of one change to your program. We had an illness from a student, and Rania Freegard, at the last moment, stepped in to fill that, so we were very pleased that she was willing to do that for us, so thank you. John Newton was a slave ship captain involved in the Atlantic slave trade. In 1748, a storm battered his vessel so severely that he prayed to God for mercy and was delivered. Only a few years later, he left seafaring altogether and began studying Christian theology. In 1772, he wrote this Christian hymn as a spiritual autobiography with deep regret for his involvement in the slave trade. Listen to this guitar solo presented by a 6th grader from Locust Corner Elementary, Amazing Grace.
Our next Reader's Theater script tells of the escape of William and Ellen Craft from Macon, Georgia to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They attempted one of the longest escapes in the history of slavery. They had been slaves all their lives and decided to escape, even though they knew that fugitives in the deep South were usually caught and whipped and often tortured to death. The 4th grade class of Monroe Elementary now presents Stealing Freedom.
William and Ellen Craft lived in Macon, Georgia, in the deep South. They had been slaves all their lives. Ellen was a very light-skinned black slave. She was a daughter of her owner and one of his slaves. She was given as a wedding gift to her white daughter who lived in Macon. Ellen was a household servant with a skilled seamstress. Sometimes she earned small tips for her work. When Ellen was 18, she met William, a talented carpenter who worked in a chemical shop. Although he was a slave, William's owner allowed him to keep all of his pay. He also worked small tips and long jobs. William and Ellen decided to marry.
William, I love you deeply, but we must get out of this place where we have children. I don't want my children born as slaves and owned as my master. I won't have it.
My first owner sold my parents to different planters. I never saw them again, nor did they see each other ever again. My brothers and sisters were each sold to different slave buyers as I was growing up. Right now, I am a better owner than those slaves do. But he could sell me tomorrow. I could be led away in chains to work hundreds of miles away and be forever separated. Our only hope is freedom, and I think I have a plan for it.
We have to escape Macon. It's hundreds of miles away from any northern state. We could be caught by bounty hunters or slave catchers before we reach the Ohio River and the free states north of it. We don't know the way, and we'd be alone against the world with no one to help us. We'd never survive alone in the mountains, swamps, the wild regions like some slaves have done.
Runaways hardly ever make it from as far south as we live. They're usually caught, whipped, attacked by dogs, branded, sold farther south to cotton farmers, or tortured.
What is your plan, William?
Take me north on the train as your slave.
What are you talking about?
I've been thinking this out very carefully for some time. I'm dark-skinned and nothing will disguise my looks, but you are light-skinned and can almost pass for me.
Maybe in the dark, but I quickly be discovered. White men would notice the difference. I don't look much like a white woman. Even a white woman probably was slave and had trouble going where she wanted to when we got close to the northern states.
True, but a white man with a slave would hardly be noticed. You would have to cut your beautiful hair to a white man's style and wear some men's clothes. Your face is too soft and lovely, so we'd have to hide us.
A toothache! Oh, my Crowlers had a bandage for over his face for a month. It would hide most of my face. I can't read or write though, and Crowlers have to sign their names on ships, manifests, or other documents. We aren't even allowed to learn how to write our own names, but I can talk like a white. I used to imitate all the white people when I was growing up.
You could have a broken arm or a serious disease and carry your right arm in a sling. Then you couldn't be expected to write. It would also give you an excuse to keep your slavery.
This may work, but when we start, William, I'm not turning back. I'd rather die like a dog than be brought back and go together all the way to freedom or death.
All the way to freedom or death, we will steal ourselves and our freedom. The best time to leave is at Christmas. Light bulbs are destructive.
Elevating hands soon, those slaves that Christmas passes from their owners, along with the state of rebellion for a few days. The trouble is, William Johnson and his slave. By the time they were missed, they were to be sleeping again. They boarded a train just before Christmas and almost falls in danger of being as the slave, William and Orion, the baggage handler. While sleeping in the corner of the car, William saw his master checking every grill on his bar searching. His master had become suspicious and was checking to make sure he
Virginia to meet relatives. I've never been there. I have a terrible toothache. I've had it for weeks. I fell and cut my arm and hit my jaw. I haven't felt right since.
I know a good doctor at our next stop. Perhaps you should stop and see him.
I think not. I'll see my family's doctor in Virginia when I get there. I'm going to just rest now.
Suit yourself.
He left the train and boarded a steamboat bound for Charlestown, South Carolina. Ellen let William eat scraps off her plate. He was feeding her because her arm was supposed to be badly injured. William was required to sleep on the deck without food or water as there was no other place for slaves.
You're spoiling that slave, you know. You treat him like a favorite child or a pet. These blacks need to be kept in their place.
I'm not feeling well. My arm is hurt and he feeds me.
That's all well and good, but you're letting that slave eat the scraps off your own plate. That's disgusting. Don't forget his place. Slaves need to be whipped good and often. I'd be glad to give him a good thrashing right now if you'd like. It would teach him a lesson.
I can handle my own business and my own slaves without any interference from you. Thank you.
You're making a mistake. Take my word for it. Next thing you know, he'll be running away to the north. Tell you what, I'll give you $1,000 for that slave right now. I could use one of his size to handle the horses, and you won't have to worry about him escaping. I'll teach him some.
No, he's been in my family a long time. He's trusted and I need him.
You're making a big mistake.
I don't think so.
In Charleston, Ellen was challenged by a tough court official who disliked the idea of letting slaves travel north. Ellen let her anger work with her.
Sir, you can't take that slave on the steamboat, and you don't want to. You're heading in a free slave state, and that slave's likely to just up and run away.
William has been in my family a long time. I need him.
I can't let you take him. There are too many runaway slaves in the north, and you haven't signed the manifest.
I can't sign. My arm is broken. I paid for a passage, and I'm boarding the ship. I'm a Salvin gentleman. I've urgent business in Washington, and I will not have my business interfered with. Now get us on that ship.
All right, sir. I'll let you board. But mind my words, that slave will be north of 3 in a week.
William and Ellen sailed by steamer to Wilmington, North Carolina, then their trains to Richmond and Fredericksburg, Virginia. They boarded a steamer to Washington, D.C., and rode a train to Baltimore, Maryland, where they switched trains to a trip to Philadelphia. Here they were stopped by a determined railroader.
Mister, you can't take that slave with you to Philadelphia. That's a hiding place for fugitive slaves. He'll run away as soon as he sets foot in the city, or some abolitionist will turn his head with radical ideas. You can't go.
I'm ill, and I need William's help. He has always been very loyal.
You can't trust any slave. They'll all run at the first chance. I'll not allow him to travel on the train.
I come from the best families in Georgia. I paid for my ticket. William will ride in the baggage car as usual. We are going on this train, or I will contact higher authorities.
Okay, but you've been warned. You better keep a chain on that fella, or he'll be free in no time.
She got away with it. William and Ellen arrived in Philadelphia, where they contacted William Stiff, the famous station master of the Underground Railroad. He hid them for a few weeks and set them on to Boston, but their masters found no way to where it had been called. 2 years after William and Ellen started their journey, they sailed to England, where they remained until the end of the Civil War.
Spirituals gave hope to slaves, freedmen, and those who dreamed of the day slavery would be abolished. In our visit to the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, students were encouraged to connect this next song to the lives of John Parker and Reverend John Rankin. Mr. Parker spent many nights secretly rowing a boat across the wide expanse of the Ohio River looking for fugitives, while Reverend Rankin and his family helped move untold numbers of escaping slaves along the route to freedom. Listen to this vocal duet presented by 6th graders from Locust Corner Elementary and Monroe Elementary. Swing Low, Sweet Chariot.
chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Sometimes I'm up and sometimes I'm down, coming for to carry me home. But still my soul feels heaven bound, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. The greatest conductor of the Underground Railroad was a runaway slave named Harriet Tubman, known to those she helped escape as Moses. She established a route of Underground Railroad stations and made more than 20 trips into southern states, rescuing her 2 brothers, many other family members, and over 300 other slaves. Our next Reader's Theater script recounts one of Harriet Tubman's trips to the South to free other slaves. The 5th grade class of New Richmond Elementary now presents Moses Leads Her People to Freedom.
In 1849, Harriet Tubman learned that she was about to be sold, so she decided to escape while she was still in Maryland, next to the free state of Pennsylvania. She left her husband, who was unwilling to go with her, and traveled by foot mostly at night. She made contact with station masters of the Underground Railroad and guided her to Philadelphia. There she met William Still, a leading member of the Anti-Slavery Society, who helped her get settled.
I have a job and my freedom, Mr. Still, but isn't that enough? My brothers and sisters, parents, and friends are still human property. There are almost 3 million of my people in slavery. I must go down south like Moses to bring my people to freedom.
I understand your dedication, Harriet, but all the conductors are men. Going south is terribly dangerous. You are a fugitive. Once you cross the line, you are a slave again. The slave catchers and patrollers are brutal men. They get paid whether you are dead or alive.
Nobody cared. I wasn't a man. They tied me to a mule to plow the field or put an axe in my hand. I have a pistol. I don't intend to get caught, and I won't be taken alive. I have saved a few dollars, and as soon as I have enough, I plan to go back for my family. Can you find out anything about them through your contacts in Maryland?
William Still discovered that Harriet's sister, Mary Ann, was to be sold at an auction. Harriet traveled back to Maryland, going from one Underground Railroad station to another. She arrived in Hamburg, Maryland, armed with her pistol and a great deal of courage. She met Mary Ann's husband, John Bowley, a free black, in a barn.
Harriet, I'm so happy to see you, but they already have Mary and our 3 children in slave pens. The auctioneer is going to sell them this afternoon.
Wait until the auctioneer goes to lunch. Write a note saying these 4 slaves were bought by a local planter and you are to take them to him. The guards will not expect a forgery. Slaves aren't supposed to read or write. Bring them to the old farmhouse at the edge of town. They're friends. Hide there until night.
The sky's overcast. How are you going to find the drinking garden when it's wet? Come get lost.
No, our father taught us that the moss was in the north side of the tree. We can kill the trees.
By the time they had traveled a few miles on foot, Mary Ann took a shad was left, and one of the fugitive slaves was beginning to complain.
Mary Ann, give this medicine to Annie. Can't afford to have her crying. Sound carries a long way in these woods.
Will it hurt her?
It's a sleeping potion. She'll be fine. We can't take chances.
Are you sure you know where we're going? If we go back now, then we have another back. I don't want to get cracked. I'm heading.
Nobody leaves, nobody quits. You'll endanger us all if you do. Believe me, we're bound for freedom, and there's no turning back.
They arrived at a dirt cellar near the edge of
stay in this cellar till night. No talking. It's going to be very crowded. There's barely any room for us to fit, but it won't be the worst. Tomorrow we travel in a wagon under a load of hay. We will be hiding in attics and barns and in a tunnel near a ditch. It's a long way, but we'll make it.
They traveled for a week from one station to another along a network of farms, Quaker meeting houses, and abandoned sheds until they reached the safety of Philadelphia and Winslow home. Mary Ann and her family were sent north to Canada, and Harriet headed back south after a few months to rescue more of her family. Harriet's husband made 20 trips in the slave states to bring her family, friends, and other slaves to freedom. She became known as Moses to the people she helped. She was so feared by slave owners that they offered a $40,000 bounty for her, dead or alive.
Although she was born into slavery, Sojourner Truth grew up with a powerful sense of justice. As a freed woman, Truth spoke out for women's rights at a time when women had little voice in public affairs, and women of African descent had even less power. The 6th grade class of Monroe Elementary now presents Sojourner Truth, a life devoted to justice.
In 1797, Sojourner Truth was born to slavery in New York State. She was given the name Isabel Bonfrey.
Now, Bonfrey is an unusual name. It comes from the Low Dutch language spoken in New York, and it means tree. Isabella's father was very tall and his son very straight. That's why he was called Bonfrey.
Isabella's mother was named Betsy. She was known by her nickname Mama Beck. When she was very young, Isabella would sit with her mother under the trees, and together they would gaze up at the stars.
Remember, Isabella, whenever times get tough, just look up at the stars. The heavens are bigger than all of us. Looking at the stars reminds us that we can cleanse the world, even though we may not understand it.
But Mama, why can't we understand it? Why must life be so hard?
I don't know, child, but just remember, look at the stars when you need the strength of the heavens. The strength is always there for you.
Soon Isabella would learn what her mother meant. She was about to face one of the greatest hardships in her life.
Isabella's beloved mother died, and not long after, when she was just 9 years old, she was stowed away from her family. She was made to work very hard, but when she was able, Isabella would glance up at the night sky and remember her mother's words.
I'm trying to be strong, Mama, but I miss you so much. I feel so alone. 2 years later, when she was 11, Isabella was sold again, this time to a fisherman.
For the next 18 months, Isabella was made to work very hard.
It isn't right that I should be away from my father. It isn't right that people can buy and sell other people. I'm trying so hard to be strong, but I know in my heart that this just isn't right.
Isabella had a strong sense of right and wrong. Later in her life, she spoke out against injustice. Now she was just a little girl kept in slavery.
Before she turned 13, Isabella was sold again, this time to a man named John Dumont. She spent many years working in his fields, milking his cows, weaving his clothes, cooking for him, and caring for his children.
During those years, Isabella married Thomas, another of Mr. Dumont's slaves. In time, they had 5 children together. Even though there were moments of happiness, life as a slave was never easy.
But then, in 1827, when Isabella was about 30, the state of New York passed a bill to grant freedom to slaves of Isabella's age. When Mr. Dumont refused to grant Isabella her freedom, as the law provided, she turned once again to the heavens to pray for the strength and guidance.
Lord, help me be strong. Help me do the right thing. I have this baby daughter in my arms, and I can't stand to see her raised up in slavery.
Then Isabella decided to do something very brave. She decided to take her empty child and just walk away from John Dumont.
She walked and walked until she came upon a house owned by Mr. and Mrs. Van Wagner, 2 very kind people.
It wasn't long, though, before Mr. John Dumont came looking for her.
So, you've run away from me, Isabella.
No, sir, I did not run away. I walked away by daylight.
You know you must go back with me.
No, I won't go back with you.
Then I shall take your child.
No, sir, you shall not.
Now see here, I don't believe in slavery, and I've never bought or sold another human being. But rather than you take Isabella and her baby back by force, why don't I purchase her services from you?
Well, that might work. Let's see. She owes me another year of work. So, if you give me $20 for Isabella and $5 for the child, then they can stay here with you. For the next 2 years, Isabella was employed by the Van Wagner. While there, she found out the lumper son, Peter, had been sold out of state illegally. She filed a suit in court, and she won. The first black woman to sue a white man and win.
You see, Isabella had not forgotten what she had learned about right and wrong.
The years passed, and Isabella continued working for justice, for abolition, and for women's rights. When she was 46 years old, she adopted the name Sojourner Truth.
Sojourner Truth traveled from city to city, speaking about justice. In 1851, she attended the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio.
Little did she know that on that day, she would make a speech that would be remembered even to this day.
Ladies and gentlemen, order please. We are about to begin. As you know, we are here at this convention to discuss the issue of women's rights. Why is it that we live in a free land, but women are prohibited from voting?
You ask why. The answer is obvious. Men have a superior intellect, that's why. Plus, Christ made a man. That obviously means that men are to be favored. But in all seriousness, ladies need to be protected from the pleasantness of life. They are to be treated with courtesy, they are to be helped into carriages, and they are to be taken to all the best places.
At this, Sojourner Truth rose and approached the podium. You remember, she had a very strong sense of right and wrong, and she could not bear to be silent when faced with injustice.
Mrs. Gage, don't let that woman speak. People confuse the issue of women's rights with abolition. You can't let her speak.
If Sojourner Truth wants to address this convention, then she may. Sojourner Truth stood at the podium and looked at her crowd, and in a powerful voice she began to speak.
Well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter.
Sojourner pointed to the minister.
That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over hills, and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody helps me any best place, and ain't I a woman?
Sojourner's voice rose as she stood up straight and tall.
Look at me. Look at my arm.
Sojourner bared her right arm and flexed her powerful muscles.
I have plowed, I have planted, and I have gathered in a barn. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and live life as well. And ain't I a woman? I have born children and seen most of them sold into slavery. And when I cried out with a mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman?
The women in the audience began to cheer wildly. Sojourner pointed to the minister once again.
He talks about this thing in his head. What's that they call it?
Intellect.
That's it. What's intellect got to do with women's rights or black folks' rights? And again, he says that women can't have as much rights as men. Because Christ wasn't a woman. Well, where did your Christ come from? From God and woman. It had nothing to do with him.
The crowd erupted in applause. Sojourner took her seat while the audience clapped and cheered.
For the remainder of her life, Sojourner continued working tirelessly for justice, for women's rights, for abolition, and for an end to capital punishment. She died at her home in Michigan at the age of 86.
Our next song is one of the most recognizable hymns in the English-speaking language. While at the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, the students studied the Tom Feelings mural. There were many images that represented the transatlantic slave trade. John Newton admitted that, as a slave ship captain, he was a ruthless businessman and an unfeeling observer of the Africans he traded. Listen to the words of this song that illustrate that even the most wretched can be changed through God's mercy and grace. A fifth grader at New Richmond Elementary now presents a vocal solo of Amazing Grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I
a woman by the name of Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat for a white man. This simple act of defiance led to a year-long historic boycott within the Black community of Montgomery, Alabama. When Martin Luther King Jr. joined the boycott, the civil rights movement began. The 6th grade class of Locust Corner Elementary now presents the Montgomery Bus Boycott.
It is Thursday, December 1st, 1955. A black woman named Rosa Parks is waiting at a bus stop on Cleveland Avenue in Montgomery, Alabama. When the bus stops for her, she boards the bus and takes a seat in the back where blacks are required to sit. After several other stops, the front seats are all filled up with white people, and one white man is standing in the aisle.
You back there, get up. I need those seats. Did you hear me, lady? I said get up. Are you going to move or not?
No, I'm not.
You must not be hearing right, lady. Everyone knows those seats go to white folks when they're needed. You know I'm not going to be able to let you get away with this. What would all my passengers think? There's a law about this now.
Maybe it's time we had a law that treated people fairly.
I'll let someone else worry about whether the laws are fair or not. Lady, I'm calling the police to have you arrested.
You do that.
Excuse me, officer. Could you please step on the bus and help us out?
What's the problem?
This lady won't give up and give a seat to the other passenger. I told her to move, but she won't budge.
Do you speak English, lady?
Yes, I do.
Do you understand what the bus driver said?
Yes, I did.
Then why won't you get up?
I didn't think I should have to. Why do you push us around?
I don't know, but the law is the law and you're breaking it. I'm putting you under arrest. The police officer put Rosa into a patrol car and took her to jail. She was fingerprinted and photographed, and then she was put into a cell. A friend of Rosa's, Mrs. Pratt, had been on the bus when Rosa was arrested. She ran to Rosa's house to tell her husband what had happened.
Rosa didn't move. The bus driver had to pull the bus over and call the police. The next thing I knew, Rosa was on her way to jail.
I'm going to get some help. Go and get my friend Edie Nixon. Tell him to meet me here at the jail, and quick.
Whatever you say, Raymond.
Raymond and Edie paid Rosa's bail and got her out of jail. When they got home, they all discussed Rosa's arrest over a cup of coffee.
They didn't hurt you, did they?
No, but I almost got another fine. I was so thirsty that I just drank out of the water fountain without paying at the jailhouse without paying any attention. The officer told me the fountain was for whites only. Imagine that, even in jail.
It's time for change. We've been living with this injustice for too long. I think that your arrest might be a blessing in disguise, Rosa.
Why do you say that?
Word about your arrest is going around town like wildfire, and people are up in arms about it. This is our chance to organize the community.
How?
We can boycott the buses. If we have to give up our seats to white people, we shouldn't ride the buses at all.
How long will the boycott last?
Until they desegregate the buses.
Edie, we can't change the whole world in one day.
But we've got to start somewhere. Are you with me?
Yes, Edie, it's time, like you said.
Rosa, I'm worried about your safety. You know, a lot of folks are going to be invited to us when they hear about this.
If we all unite, we can be strong and help each other through.
Later that night, Edie planned the boycott with a new minister at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. The new pastor's name was Martin Luther King Jr.
This boycott is going to need a lot of organization. We'll need a place to come together and coordinate our efforts. I'm suggesting we use the church as a meeting place. I was hoping you could provide some leadership, Reverend King.
I'm not so sure that's such a good idea. I've only been here for a year, and the people might not accept me as a leader.
The situation is never going to be perfect. We all just have to rise to the occasion and do the best we can.
I can see the urgency in the situation. Yes, let's use the church as our headquarters. How do you think we should handle the boycott?
Volunteers have already made leaflets telling people not to ride the buses on Monday. We've also set up some carpools so that people can still get to work, and black cab drivers have agreed to give people rides for 10 cents.
On Monday, December 5th, there were hardly any black people on the buses. Instead, they gathered on street corners and waited for rides from friends and cab drivers. Rosa went to court and was fined $10 for breaking the law. She refused to pay the fines. That night, there was a mass meeting to decide on a future course of action. At the meeting, Reverend King was elected leader of the movement. He gave a speech that electrified his audience.
We are here because we are American citizens, and we are determined to apply our citizenship to the fullest.
That's right.
There comes a time when people get tired of being trampled. There comes a time, my friends, when people get tired of being subjected to humiliation and despair.
Tell it.
We have a long road ahead of us, brothers and sisters. Our enemies will try to bring us down into the pit of hatred. You cannot have hatred in your heart and seek justice at the same time. You must meet violence with nonviolence.
Show us the way.
Right here in Montgomery, when the history books are written, in the future somebody will say there lived a race of people, black people, who have the moral courage to stand up for their rights.
Exposed.
In the meantime, we must stick together and work together if we are to win our rights as American citizens. The boycott will continue, for what we are doing is right. What we are doing is just.
God bless you, Brother King.
The blacks of Montgomery were determined to stand up for their rights and to challenge my power. They continued the boycott in spite of threats and attacks by racists. On December 20th, 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court finally ordered the city of Montgomery to desegregate its buses. The boycott had lasted over a year, but it had achieved its goal. Blacks no longer had to give up their seats to white passengers. Reverend King continued to fight for justice, and growing numbers of people joined him in his struggle. Rosa Parks' simple act of defiance 1 year earlier had marked the beginning of what is now called the Civil Rights Movement.
Seeking faith in God, slaves used songs to help them face the horrible conditions of slavery. During our visit to the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, students stood inside an actual reconstructed slave pen used as a storage warehouse for human beings. They saw the chains used to bind men to the upper level to prevent escape. Listen to this next vocal solo presented by a 4th grader at Monroe Elementary, Over My Head.
Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Oh, there must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Oh, there must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Oh, there must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see glory in the air. Over my head, I see glory in the air. Over my head, I see glory in the air. Oh, there must be a God somewhere.
Abraham Lincoln wrote the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, and 2 years later, the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified, making slavery illegal in the United States. From the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in 1963, a speech was delivered that defined the civil rights movement. The 4th and 5th grade class at Locust Corner Elementary now presents a portion of Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous speech, I Have a Dream.
I say to you, my friends, that even though we must face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
I have a dream that one day out in the Red Hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood.
I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering in the heat of injustice, sweltering in the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with words of imposition and nullification, that one day, right down in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places shall be made plain, and the crooked places shall be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see his glory.
This is our hope. This is the faith that will go back to the South.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to transform our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing the new meaning. My country to thee, see the land of liberty. Of thee I sing, where my fathers died, land of the pilgrims cried. From every mountainside let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the cautious hilltops of New Hampshire.
Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York.
Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania.
Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California.
But not only that, let freedom ring from the Star Mountain of Georgia.
Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee.
Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside let freedom ring. When we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and hamlet, from every state and city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children,
Black men and white men,
Jews and Gentiles,
Catholics and Protestants, we will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Hebrew scripture. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
I'd like to ask all of our students to stand. And let's take one more opportunity to congratulate them for their performances and their Feel free to visit the tables in the back of the room for light refreshments and browse the research slides and the displays that are in the back of the room. We hope that you'll take a few minutes to speak with our students tonight and ask them any questions about things they learned in the course. This concludes our program, and we thank you for joining us.